let's go ahead and take a look at the story of Nacht Der Untoten, our very first zombies map, and because of that, as you would expect, there isn't much to it. At this time, zombies was very much a bonus game mode. Treyarch didn't really plan on from here, meaning all of the usual things we would see in our zombies maps, such as a deep integrated storyline, lots of Easter eggs, and an established set of characters, didn't really exist. As the game mode progressed in later years, Nacht Der Untoten did see a little bit of revisionism. Treyarch went back and added a few things here and there and made it fit into the official storyline, but still the map is simple. Back in World War II, when Group 935 were creating an undead army for Nazi Germany, using army trucks, the Germans began transporting Element 115 and the undead between Group 935 facilities, when all of a sudden an allied plane flying over an airfield malfunctions and crashes into the trucks, causing a zombie outbreak. Only 4 US Marines who were on the plane survived the crash, and as they were being swarmed by the undead, they quickly retreated into a nearby building, holding out for as long as they could, repairing barriers and using weapons that appeared off the wall and magic boxes to assist them. All of these were provided by Dr. Monty. However, it wasn't enough, and soon after, the zombies overrun the building and the 4 Marines were killed. And that's it. There's really nothing more to Nacht Der Untoten's storyline. However, we have seen it pop up again multiple times. Once in Zombies Chronicles, where in this version of the map, it either takes place in an alternate dimension to the original, or is a deviation of the official cycle, just one of the many alternate events that took place that we never got to see, or in this case, we did get to see. And I say this because here, we don't play as the 4 unnamed US Marines, we actually play as Richtofen, Takio, Nikolai, and Dempsey.
Nacht Der Untoten. That translates as Night of the Dead. I learned that tonight. Been trying to scrub up on my German, you see. Anyway, it happened in an old concrete building on an airfield somewhere in, I don't know where. I remember it being really small, simple by today's standards. I think there was a fog. Nacht Der Untoten. That translates as Night of the Dead. I learned that tonight. Been trying to scrub up on my German, you see. Anyway, it happened in an old concrete building on an airfield somewhere in, I don't know where. I remember it being really small, simple by today's standards. I think there was a fog. Not a lot of it, certainly not coming into the building itself. You know what I just realized? You weren't even there. At least not at first. It was some other random, forgettable soldiers that had the misfortune to live through that horrible night, or Nacht, as it was actually known. Yeah, I speak German now.
Why Ultimis were ever here in the first place is still, to this day, unexplained, because in the timeline they have absolutely no reason to be. Pretty much every map that these characters have travelled to has either been accidental or for a specific reason. For example, they teleported to Ascension to collect Richtofen's diary. They teleported to Call of the Dead to collect the Golden Rod. Moon to complete his grand scheme. But Kino Der Toten, for example, Ultimis teleported there accidentally because they overloaded the teleporter. It's the same with Classified, but for every other map, they travelled there intentionally, and those two were accidents. But them being in Nacht Der Untoten, there was no reason for that as a part of the cycle, and because there is no main Easter egg, I can only assume them being here, lore-wise, is nothing more than an accident, but how they would have arrived here, we just don't know. Overloading a teleporter again? Maybe that's the only viable explanation. Or maybe in an alternate universe or dimension, they had a purpose, but nothing of the sorts was ever shown to us. Also remembering, they were in the Black Ops 1 version of Nacht Der Untoten as well. Even in that game, we played as Ultimis, not the original unnamed Marines. So there we can also assume it's an alternate dimension or a variation of the cycle. Whichever it is, I don't think it really matters. All you need to know is they were there. The why isn't important. And then of course, we saw Nacht Der Untoten once again. This time, it was in a new universe, in D Machine. The map takes place in Morasco, Nazi-occupied Europe, which was the exact same location as the original, but there are some noticeable changes this time around. Although the layout is the same, the building has been heavily graffitied, it is now snowing, there are doors and holes in areas that weren't there originally, but this is the Nacht Der Untoten building. What I believe's happened here is, at the end of Black Ops 4 when the multiverse was banished into the Dark Ether and the new one was created by the Orgothan device, similar to the multiverse where our zombies maps existed in loads of dimensions, well, this new Dark Ether saga, the new timeline, is a new dimension where, once again, the Nacht Der Untoten building exists. But its purpose and its history is totally different. Although, D Machine's Nacht and the original back in World at War, well, both contain zombies. They are origin points of undead outbreaks. And that, when you think about it, is suspicious and more than a coincidence. And then when you take into consideration the fact that we also saw Nacht Der Untoten in transit in the cornfield, it becomes even more interesting. Now, we did recently learn the reason why Treyarch put this here. They intended it to be part of a bigger Easter egg, but it was cut for the final version of the game. This up on screen was a part of a leaked document from Transit, and one of the bullet points says for the map story, OG characters dead in prototype. You need to free them to start their quest in World at War. Prototype, for those of you who don't know, was the code name for the Nacht building. That's what it was called originally back in World at War, and that's also what it's called in Transit. So Treyarch's idea was for us to find the original characters dead in this map, and we would have to free them to start their quest in World at War. How that would work, I don't know, but this partly tells us why we see it, and it also confirms that the original characters died. I'm pretty sure by OG characters they mean the 4 Marines, right? Not Ultimis, Richtoff and Takeo, Nikolai and Dempsey, because at this point in the timeline, they were up on the moon or in Area 51, Groom Lake. Either way, they weren't here, so I can only assume the OG characters would have been the 4 unknown Marines. Even that, though, doesn't align with the storyline, because the original version of Nacht Der Untoten, as I've said, was in Poland, Nazi-occupied Europe, whereas Transit takes place in Hanford, USA. So unless some temporal displacement has happened here, and the map has been teleported through space-time to this location, that's likely, because otherwise, how would you explain seeing a double? Why is there an exact replica of the Nacht building in Transit? We've had plenty of theories over the years, but with this, it does seem that it was more than likely teleported, similar to buried, from Poland in the 1940s to Hanford, the USA, in 2035. Like I said, the same thing happened to Buried, so it's more than possible. We have also seen Nacht appear a few other times, which have really meant nothing. We've played it in Forsaken, and it's in Revelations as well, but we also see parts of other maps in that one. We know its explanation, but that is the history, the story of Nacht Der Untoten. From the very first time we saw it back in World at War, to its appearance in Transit, Zombies Chronicles, and Black Ops 1, and Cold War. And what I like about this map is it's not convoluted, it's not confusing, it's not difficult to understand from a story point of view or a gameplay point of view. The map's tiny, one of the smallest we've ever had, making it very unique. Up next is Verrucht. Anyway, there we go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, hopefully you've enjoyed the video. If you have, drop a like rating, make sure you are subscribed to the channel to stay up to date with the latest content, and we'll see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.